So welcome to TED, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the capital campaign report out. So the main part of the presentation is going to be from our consultant, Andi. Just a few logistical points before I just give another sort of brief intro. Since we are, we're trying to be responsible stewards of the church's money. We didn't bring Andi out for this. It's really obviously a very important session, so we're doing it with her remote. I think this should all work. If she'll be coming in over the speakers, we'll be able to see her. The only sort of let's say a deviation from a normal sort of TED is if you have a question for Andi, in order for her to hear you, you're going to have to come up to this microphone. Again, I know that's a little bit odd. There's just no way to make it work with the wireless microphones around here. So you'll have to come up to this one. Once I'm done, I'll turn it around. And I'll turn around the camera too, so she can see you as well. So just, if there's a bunch of questions, just form a line. If there's questions as they come, then you can come up. So again, apologize for that. If someone's not able to come up and has a question, just raise your hand. And I will do my best to relay your question to Andi. Okay. All right. So I guess the biggest news right out of the gate, and I think it's really important, and I'm super excited to share it with all of you before we start. So you have this in mind as we go. So on Monday, the vestry met and unanimously approved moving forward with the capital campaign. I think you'll see why as we go through this report. But it was pretty clear that we can have a successful campaign. We will be doing some pre-work. So there was some discussion about the timing. Actually, there's extensive discussion about a lot of different components of moving forward with the campaign. But what we decided was going to be most effective is to take care of some of that pre-work in the fall timeframe. With really launching kind of the invitation phase of the campaign, probably in March, although it may be February, maybe early April. But you'll see, for those of you that take a look at the vestry minutes, you'll see that what the vestry approved was starting a campaign, forming a committee to execute a campaign to conclude no later than Trinity Sunday in terms of the finalization of the invitation phase. So we're giving ourselves some extra time. Again, there's some really important feedback that all of you provided in the survey, so we can address things like becoming a little bit more transparent about some of the finances, around getting some of the endowment policies in place to make it really clear about what's being given and what it can be used for. To get a lot more clarity and specificity around some of the specific projects that we're going to take on. In terms of the size of the campaign, we're going to go between $750,000 and $800,000. So again, if you remember, there was around $2.7 million that was in the feasibility study. The last time I was up here talking to all of you about the campaign, I mentioned that what we were offering was a menu of things to be chosen from, and we think we have pretty good feedback that you'll see here in a minute of about, again, $750,000 or $800,000 worth of menu items that we think we can be successful in putting together in a campaign. I think that's all. Oh, the most important thing. So co-chairing the invitation phase of the campaign, and we are actively recruiting for committee members. So if any of you are interested in serving in some way based on some of the things that I've just talked about, getting details around the campaign projects, financial transparency, endowment policy, communications, some of the quick win projects. Those are kind of the 5 main action areas that we're going to be taking on in the next month. If any of you have any interest at any level in helping out with those things, you can see Sherry Burrows or I, who will be co-chairing the next phase of the campaign. So, yeah, thank you all. All right, but plenty of time for questions near the end, but I want to give as much time as possible for Andi. Again, just a quick show of hands, who did not get a handout when you came in? Who did not get a handout? 1, 2, I'll go to the office and make some more. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, I'll make about 10 more and be back in a few minutes. I think the technology will hold up. If you guys are having any problems while I'm gone, somebody's got to come up to the microphone and tell Andi what to do. Andi, can you go ahead and speak for just a minute to make sure everybody can hear you? Just give me a thumbs up.
Good morning, Trinity.
Everybody okay? Can you guys hear? Okay. All right, Andi, I'm going to leave it to you. I'll be back in 5 minutes or less with some more copies.
Thanks very much, Chris. Good morning, Trinity. Again, I just have to start saying what a pleasure it always is to work with you. You're just an extraordinary church. A psychic friend of mine even saw you on my radar and said, "What's that beautiful thing in your field?" I was actually talking about you. So you send out quite a gorgeous signal into the world, and I'm so pleased and grateful to be able to be a small part of that. This study really demonstrated that. So without much further ado, other than thanking the committee I've been working with, just amazing help, amazing talent that you have at Trinity, in the parishioners and the leadership. So to remind you, we said we would not make the decision to move forward with a capital campaign. I know that most of you can hear this in your sleep, until we got the results of this study back. And the results of this study greatly informed the unanimous vote of the vestry on Monday. And I think that'll be evident to you when I get to the bottom here. But this was that moment to vote. We definitely had green lights. And without further ado, I'll go into some statistical data, like who answered and what we all said. And then I have a few comments on your comments to help you understand them. But I really encourage everyone to read all of the comments. This is a rare opportunity to hear what each other is saying in a pretty in-depth way. Understand your community better and where you fit into your community. And most of you are going to find that to be a very pleasant read. So I know I did. So, okay, so who did we ask? We had 234 households exposed to the study, invited to respond to this study in some way or another, and 100 responded. So that's a response rate of 43%, which is excellent. So another big pat on the back to the leadership and to communication. I need a 30% response rate to give you accurate results. So you're well above that at 43%, which that means this is a very good representative involvement, in the responses. That lends a lot of credibility to the study findings, as it says on your form. To understand how that broke down, I came to Covington and personally interviewed 16 households. We sent out 175 online questionnaires directly to email boxes. And of those, 42 came back. So we had about a 24% response rate just to an online survey, which is also quite good. A lot of times people don't want to answer those, even from their church. And then that swelled greatly when we sent out a link toward the end. It wasn't sent personally to each of you, but it was an open link, and we had 35 more respond to that. So we actually had 77 people respond electronically. And then 8 of 43 that we sent out in the direct mail were also returned. So that was about 19%. So again, overall response rate of 43% of 234 people is what everything that I'll be referring to from here on out is referring to. So it's a little awkward because I can't see you, and I think we're holding questions for later. So I'm just gonna forge on, and if I'm going too fast or you can't understand me, I'm gonna have to trust you to wave at Chris or someone in the room to adjust the sound and let me know, okay? So the first 2 questions on the survey were really important ones for the work we were doing. We wanted to score at least 80% on both of those questions, because that would show that we had involved the congregation in coming up with the plans. and made the entire congregation aware of our plans and that we were considering a capital campaign, including that we wouldn't move forward without you. And you scored very, very well on that. So the first question was, were you aware before you got these materials, before you were answering these questions and looking at the tentative case statement, were you aware that Trinity was considering a capital campaign? And we had 81% say they were completely aware of that. So hit the mark there, but 11% more said they were somewhat aware. Usually, because you either know or you don't know that a capital campaign is going on, that 11%, when they say somewhat aware, means I was aware, but I'm not quite on board, or I don't agree with something yet. So I think it's fair to say that we were closer to 90% awareness that you're considering a campaign. So excellent job communicating and exploring the aspects of this campaign. And related to that, number 2, we asked if people were familiar with all of the plans and proposed projects and even the associated costs, estimated costs if we were to do them. And to that, we had 35% say they were familiar with everything, which is actually quite good. And 45% more say they were familiar with some. So that's right on the mark at 80% awareness of something. Again, familiar with some often means there's something I don't agree with, or there's something I need to know more about, like thanks for telling me, but I didn't know quite enough. Or they really didn't know about it and we got that through the comments, so we're aware of it. But you hit the 80% mark or more on the 2 important questions. So again, that lends a lot of credibility to the findings. People have done their homework, you know what you're talking about, and well, that's it. So also very important, now that you know about it, were you aware, or excuse me, are you in favor of doing a campaign? So we asked each person personally, were you in favor of a campaign? And 54% were in favor of a campaign right from the start. So just as proposed. And 34% more were in favor with some concerns. Again, those are excellent numbers. And only 5% were opposed to having a campaign of all of the respondents. So that's a definite green light that there's support for a campaign. It's also a pretty strong indicator that there are there are concerns, and there are things we have the opportunity because of the study to address. We can circle back, and the vestry's actually given you a great amount of time, some spaciousness through the fall and winter to really get that right. So good decisions on the part of your lay leadership continue, and your leadership. So in favor of the campaign. One of the questions, the next question we ask is, who's answering? Usually, reason we ask the question about whether or not people are annual pledgers is that typically, and I've already seen some atypical things about Trinity, but typically, you'll get gifts to a capital campaign, which is we would call as extraordinary giving from a long time ago. So annual giving is ordinary giving. Annual stewardship is ordinary giving for the ordinary operation of the church, and capital campaigns are extraordinary. So anything that God's calling you to do, or you are presented with or want to take on that exceeds what you can do from your annual operating budget, is fair game for a capital campaign these days. A capital campaign is a healthy process, so I really believe that's one of the ways that God takes care of us, actually, in church. But it's gone way beyond capital projects, way beyond bricks and mortar, to a mix, which you have, actually. But usually to an extraordinary effort like that, you can expect additional pledges in addition to annual stewardship from about 80% of your already pledging members. So it's important to know that we're hearing from pledgers. They're not the only ones who are going to participate. You are not the most important people. Our whole community counts, but that's why we asked that question. And 84% were pledgers and only 9% weren't. So there's a few that didn't answer that question. So right in line with what we'd expect. But again, that means that this report reflects the perspectives of the people who are likely to participate in the campaign. Okay. So we did ask a timing question, and we had 47% in favor right then at the moment they were filling out the study of doing the campaign in the fall. 37% had no strong feeling either way. And 9% were opposed to doing a campaign in the fall. So those are actually a little on the low side, but completely healthy. It was green lights for going forward. But I like the decision very much of the vestry to say, great, we could, but we don't have to. So let's really take some extra time and some extra spaciousness to really dig all the gold out of this study and respond to people's concerns, respond to things people didn't understand, create conditions that people were concerned with, correct things that need correcting. So you really bought yourself some time to do that, even though you could have moved forward in the fall, which is a wise decision. Okay, so then the next two statistical questions had to do with the current local economy. So these are perception questions. They're not, people don't need to be economists. But we ask how people are feeling about the local economic climate, because when you're considering a long-term commitment to something like a capital campaign, your optimism or lack of optimism about how the economy is going around you has an impact. So these are also important questions while we're considering our goal and how successful we could be. But these questions were pretty extraordinary at Trinity and said some really interesting things about Covington. So the first one was, do you just feel that the local economy is, good, fair, poor, excellent? And you actually had 59% of the respondents feeling that the local economy around Covington, in and around Covington, is good. And 11% more felt that it was excellent, which I very rarely see. And 21% thinking it's fair. And you had 0 people, not one person responding felt that the local economy is doing poorly. So that's tremendous economic optimism. I haven't seen those numbers in many, many years. And even from there, we asked if it was improving, remaining the same, or maybe going down a bit and decline. And 49% felt that it was improving, even from, mostly good and excellent. And 39% felt that it was at least holding steady. And only 3% were experiencing that the local economy was declining. So tremendous economic optimism in the local area. So as far as the study goes, I could have put a check in that box right away and said, we're fine. But what was extra special about Trinity is the number of people. So pat your neighbor on the back. You're such a special congregation. The number of people who clearly understood that just because the economy is doing well, and maybe even I'm doing well, that's not across the board. That's not 100%. Because of that, actually, there's people who are suffering, getting pushed out, not doing that well. Human beings aren't statistics, and a huge upswell of desire to help in the local community. So I just really want to appreciate about Trinity the level of social awareness and compassion and desire to help the community. So that came out even as people were answering these questions. Okay. So we do ask a question, even though at the tentative case statement phase, we are, as Chris said, just presenting a menu. This is everything that came up in the dream catching that really had juice, or that the leadership is aware that we need. And if we were to do every single thing that that really made any sense at all, it would have cost 2.7 million. So that's a tentative goal. It's not really a goal. It's what the prospective bill would be if you did everything on the menu. But so we do ask, though, just to get a perception of the congregation about the microeconomy in Trinity and optimism. Do you think we could reach 2.7 million if we did a capital campaign? And we actually had 14% saying, yeah, I think we can do that. I think we can make 2.7 million. So that was really, really, that was unusually optimistic also. And 63% weren't sure. So, you know, a large number of people were like, well, I'm not positive, but I think we could maybe do that. And then 15% thinking that you couldn't attain that goal. So that was really interesting. And then we asked people to guess, well, if we don't make that much, how much do you think we can make? And most of those were in a range of 500,000 to $1 million. So a lot of awareness and accuracy actually in the perception of the congregation about what you're capable of financially. So a lot of self-awareness at Trinity as well. So then a very important question was the project prioritization. So this is where we said you're prioritizing, you're not ranking, but respond to each thing that's being presented on the tentative case statement and let us know, to you personally or to your family or household, is that a high priority for you, a medium priority, a low priority, or are you opposed to it? Or do you not know enough to say, I lack information, I need to know more? What I do is a deeply scientific, very highly statistical method of then number, if you said high priority, I gave it 3 points. If you said medium, I gave it 2. If you said low, I gave it 1. If you said opposed, I took a point away. And if you said lack information, it was neutral. And from assigning those points, I was able to generate a ranked list for you without you having to rank. So they could all be high priority to you or low priority to you. That was important. So when we did that, another extraordinary thing, there's quite a few about Trinity for me in this study. I'm a bit of a geek, but I was excited and impressed. Far and away, the most points, the highest priority for the congregation, if we were to move forward with a campaign, was the preservation and maintenance endowment. That's remarkable because most lay people especially, but really most people don't even understand what an endowment is. And when we set out to start communicating about this campaign, we were educating about that as best we could. We were helping people understand how that fit into the entire overall financial picture of the church and your mission and vision and the way you budget. But it's still a kind of a complex and not well-known thing. So for this congregation to vote so overwhelmingly for an endowment is extraordinarily exciting to me and unusual. So again, I'm a bit of a geek about these things, but that's just really cool to me. So you're really understanding the benefit of the long-term investment in Trinity, the idea of leaving a legacy, the idea of something serving church in perpetuity. So there's a deep generosity to that that's indicated in that about the future and taking care of future generations. So it just shows a lot again about the quality of your community. Right below preservation and maintenance endowment were kitchen improvements. The kitchen is a very important room in most churches, so that didn't really surprise me much. and resurfacing the children's garden. Again, we definitely want to take care of our children and our youth, so that also didn't surprise me. But then coming in right behind that was the staffing endowment. So definitely didn't get as much juice as the preservation and maintenance, but it got juice. So endowments were pretty high up there on the list. That seems to be where the energy is going, plus these capital improvements. But most of the time people were talking about the staffing endowment. Again, there was a clear understanding in the comments and in the general tone that would help your budget, help you do outreach and vision and help the community better. And that it would free you up to use your money, your annual stewardship funds more creatively, and be more creative in the future, and staff up to do the work that fits your vision. So people had a lot of awareness of that, in addition to their love for your historic buildings. The tower entrance renovation. So then we have a series of capital projects that did come together and have juice. So taking care of that tower entrance, taking care of the assisted hearing system in the sanctuary, and then retiring the debt. That's one of the things that we're going to be looking into more in the coming months, because we had a whole lot of people say, that's a low priority to me, or don't do it. And then we had a whole lot of people say,
hey Andy, there's a quick question here. So John's coming up.
Thanks. Pause point on the debt.
I may be jumping the gun here. When you skipped over it, I thought I'd ask a question. Oh, I may be jumping the gun here, but when you skipped it, I thought I'd jump in. Oh, what's the -7 mean under?
Thank you.
And also the other minuses along the way.
Yep. Just going to get to that one, because so the minuses, I went ahead and let you know how many people actually said they were opposed. So when they said it was a high, medium, or low priority, when there's more than a couple of people willing to say they're opposed to something, especially in a church campaign or church situation, we want to take a special look at that. So I was just about to say you're prescient, John, that while retiring the debt wasn't at the bottom, there were a lot of people who thought it was low priority. There was a lot of people who thought it was a very, very high priority. We actually had 13 people outright opposed to retiring the debt. So that's a polarization. That's something we want to spend some time really looking into and thinking about in the coming months, because we had 13 people. That's the answer to your question, John. It was the number of people who said they were opposed, actually opposed to retiring the debt. And we had a bunch of people, and we heard both of you, all of you, say, we absolutely must retire debt. I hate debt, get out of debt. So that indicates that there's some real work to do there, okay? When there's many people saying they're opposed to any of these, more than just a couple of people, 1 or 2 people, then we want to take an extra look. So I went ahead and included that number, because it says more than just the general prioritized scoring. Right, so that was heard loud and clear, and there's going to be a lot more work and communication and digging in to understand that and make the best decision about that particular project. Then we had the garden, which people love, and the idea of solar panels on the roof. So again, that one, most people were saying, I need more information. A lot of the people that were saying they wanted more information on the solar panels were wanting to know that it was going to make economic sense. You know, what's the long-term payoff? Do we actually save? And then there was a lot of people that are into it because it's green and it's cool. And so we had a little back and forth there. So that's one of the things that we'll be providing more information about and helping people to make a decision about before we move forward. But again, we had 6 people say, I don't want to do that. So these are all just signals and things to look at in the coming months. And then again, the idea of getting a church van, it was the lowest prioritization, and there were 14 people like absolutely against it. But what most people were against were the idea of owning something and having to maintain it and maintain staff and depreciation and kind of the complications. But they were all, even if they weren't happy about the idea of Trinity owning a van, everybody's really interested in helping with transportation, helping in the community, helping parishioners, helping youth and elderly get to events, and getting as many people who want to come to events. So there's still something to think about there. That didn't die as an idea, is what I want to get across. Okay. And then very exciting to me, right off the bat, even with the things people were saying they weren't happy about or lacked information about, I think this is the highest response. So when we asked the people, if we were to move forward with a campaign, would you be willing to contribute at some level? We had 81% right then and there willing to contribute to the campaign. That's a record, actually. I've never had that high of a number right at this moment of the tentative case statement say that they were willing to contribute despite their feelings. So very positive sign about the strength of your community. Again, the willingness to trust one another, to move forward as a group. Like maybe even if I don't like something, I'm going to show up and help in any way I can at Trinity. 12% more said they weren't sure, but people were clear about why. So we have an opportunity to address it. So we may be getting close to 90% of the respondents willing to contribute. So again, very, very positive sign that a campaign can proceed and succeed. And then another important number for me in particular, because I purposely do a volunteer-led campaign process, because I want it to live at Trinity. I don't want it to live with me and then I go away. I want, maximum involvement, which we've done so successfully already. Involvement leads to buy-in. It's kind of a teach a man to fish, teach a person to fish. Don't fish for them. So the number of volunteers, it's also a main way that I'm keep this affordable. I try to be as good a steward as I possibly can, and so does your leadership. So we had 28% willing to volunteer right then and there for a capital campaign. Again, that's not, people don't wake up in the morning, most people, and say, I think I want to work on getting money for a project at church. But you had 28% of people bravely willing right off the bat, which is a normal response rate. So I was feeling good about that. I hope for 25 to 30% to say that, to feel like we're okay, we're going to be able to find enough volunteers to get through this. But then we had 45% say they weren't sure, and nobody said they weren't, or very few people said they weren't willing. So 45% saying they're not sure, especially on this question, are you willing to volunteer for a capital campaign? At least half of those 45%, and conservatively half, are going to suddenly feel like they're positive they can volunteer when they hear that every single thing about working on a capital campaign does not involve asking other people for money. Okay, so most people are saying, I'm not sure because I am just not at all comfortable asking people for money. So I want to address that one very briefly. First of all, that means we have a very high, unusually high number of people willing to respond, willing to volunteer at Trinity. But it's also, there are a whole bunch of things when we get to the solicitation phase this spring. There's a whole bunch of things that have nothing to do with asking people for money. Time, talent, and treasure are what are going to get us through this. We're going to be honoring and acknowledging volunteering and in-kind. These are all extremely important parts of making this happen and why you have such a strong community. But believe me, there's plenty of things that need to be done, and will actually, I promise, I know you, maybe you don't believe me right now, but a lot of them are actually going to be fun. All right. And my favorite meeting of the entire campaign process, because it's so touching, is when I'm actually training you how to ask one another for money. So those of you who volunteer and make the cut. So I know you don't believe me now, but you will when it's over. So absolutely plenty of people that we can draw on to make this happen and willing to volunteer. And then finally, again, very exciting to me, especially for a campaign that has so much to do with endowment, was we are asking people about their interest in planned giving. We had 12 people say that Trinity is already in their estate plans in some form or fashion. That's in the top 3 highest I've ever seen in 17 years of doing this work. So that's a very, very healthy number of people that were willing to say out loud and have already considered Trinity in their estate plan. So you have more coming in. That to me makes an endowment campaign especially exciting, because endowments are very closely related to planned giving. Because when people give to an endowment, they know that it's going to be spent on what they want it to be spent on, and it'll never all be spent. So it'll generate in perpetuity and take care of future generations. So an endowment's a great way to leave a legacy, and people want to leave a legacy when they're making a planned gift or an estate gift. So creating these endowments is creating a very solid and exciting place for people to leave a legacy to Trinity, and they're going to grow. So we're seeding endowments. If we move forward with this campaign, an endowment or endowments, we're getting it started, and we're creating the bucket, and we're creating the policy, but we know for sure that they're going to grow significantly. We have indication that they're going to grow significantly in the future. So that helps you make decisions about those endowments, funds, and how you're going to spend them, and that it's a great idea. So very healthy there. And then we had 10 more people, at least 10, but up to 18 people, and this is a record by a lot, asked for information about how to make a planned gift to Trinity. 10 wanted information specifically about how to make a bequest in their will. And then 5 more asked, well, let's see, 5, 10. 9 more asked about what we call life income gifts. So creating a trust or an annuity. So other vehicles for leaving a planned gift. That is absolutely unprecedented for that many people to want us to send them information about planned giving. So very, very healthy sign for an endowment campaign. And I'm really excited to use the time, this extra runway that the vestries basically voted to give you before we do a campaign, to go into depth and work with a planned giving committee and create a legacy society, respond to this, and keep doing what you're already doing well, but make it better, because clearly something's already going right in that area. Okay, so those were the statistical things. I know we need to end, and I want to leave time for questions, but I just have to comment on your comments briefly. So it's not scientific, but it's really helpful to me as I move through creating the report. I just kind of take a rough tally of how many times a certain thing is mentioned. And I wanted to let you know what thing a lot of people said things about. The thing that didn't surprise me, it was extra strong at Trinity, but it didn't surprise me, is how many people have a strong sense of community and a deep appreciation for the friendships and the good people and the support and the sense of community that you have at Trinity. That's obvious. I know that you're experiencing it as a blessing. But what's very unusual, so the last thing I'm going to really pull out is wow about Trinity, is we had more people actually. Almost every church I work with these days talks about how important the sense of community is to them. But you had more people talking about how much you want to take care of the Covington community, the local community, participate in the local community, be downtown, do outreach. That's more alive than even the sense of individual community that you're experiencing there. That's just extraordinary. So I know when this money comes in, really good things are going to happen with it. And I had to pull that particular point out, even though we're short on time, because it's just really special. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Andy. Okay. So now it's open questions and answers. So as I mentioned, actually, for Andy to hear, they're going to have to come up to the mic here. I mentioned that at the beginning. So thanks for getting that, but it's just the remote thing's not going to work that way. So again, if anybody has a question, just come up to the mic. If anybody can't make it up and has a question, then just raise your hand and I'll come over and we can relay it up. So again, questions for Andy, since we have limited time with her for the next 10, 15 minutes or so. If there's questions for me, again, I want to honor everybody's time and try to end by 12:15, but I'm happy to stay as long as there's questions for me or for Sherry. We can stay a little bit longer too. So any questions about the findings in the report? Come on down.
And while people are shuffling up to the mic, I'll just remind you, we're going to be sending a summary. I'm working with Nancy on the best ways to disseminate the report, but there's a summary coming, and the full report and all the comments will be made available to every one of you that wants to see it. So don't be shy. You don't have to take my word for it.
Just for full disclosure, we are recording this too. So the recording this will be made available. Just want to let everybody know before you ask questions that we're going to share. Yeah. Sorry, my work mode is crashing in. Every time we record something, we're going to tell everybody. So some wiretapping.
Hi, Andy. I have a question. On number 12, you say that the 12 respondents that already have set up, the church is already in their will. Are those already designated to the Book of Remembrance, or are those ones that would be then redirected to this capital campaign?
Good question. We have no idea. All we know is that they've included Trinity in their estate plans. So while we would have not me, you, would have a default pathway for bequests to come in, a lot of times we definitely, with planned gifts more than any other gift, want to take care of the wishes and expressed wishes of the donor themselves. So that's very donor driven. So what they say it's about is what we would be obliged to make happen as best we could.
Sorry, I have another question too. This is just a technical question. So when you have your percentages, like number 10, they don't add up to 100% of the people responding. How did you do that? Where'd that come from?
So what we've discovered over the years is we calculate that on the number of people. So you had 100 people respond, so it came out the same way, but not everyone responded to every question. So it was still that number of respondents in your case, because it was 100%, but not everyone. Oh, and then some of those, it's because we asked 3 questions like, are you opposed or not aware? And we just didn't include it. We were highlighting that this many said yes, this many said not sure. And if it was a non-issue with the opposed, we just didn't mention it in this summary, but it is in the report.
Okay, other question?
Okay.
Is that okay, Amy? Okay, yep. Yeah, Amy says thank you. So there's a question about next steps. So again, really where we are at this point is Sherry and I have to do some work to kind of form the committee. So there's an existing committee in place, but we also want to honor the fact that that committee really just signed up for kind of the first two phases. So there will certainly be an ask to that committee of who is interested in continuing on and a description of that work, as well as the sort of open invitation. But the way that I think about it, it's going to, it's forming the committee. The committee is going to probably have two phases of work. So again, there's some pre-work that we're going to have to do based on the feedback. I mentioned kind of the big 5 or 6 areas. Andy mentioned a few others. So again, we have to just get our heads around the specific things there. Again, detailing the specifics on the project so that everybody knows exactly what it is, endowment policy, financial transparency, communications, but also, having a plan, giving component and things like that. So getting the committee together is going to be step one. We're going to try to do that in less than the next month. Pre-work, around those big areas between now and probably the Christmas timeframe, and then really starting on kind of the normal, let's say, invitation phase pre-work, which Andy's helped us a lot with so far in getting ready for invitation again in the March timeframe, and then execute, the public phase of the campaign, March through end of May or June. Is that clear enough? Okay. Thanks for the question. Other questions? Marianne, you look like you want to ask something. You're stirring. But I can come as close as this. This is it. All right. Sorry.
I'm just curious about how the last thing you said about the importance of the community to people is, and how that's reflected in these priorities here.
Do you want to field that one, Chris?
Yeah, I was going to let you go first, and then I'll add something in. So this has actually been it's a great question because it's been a recurring theme in the discussions that the committee's had, and the view is that really every one of the items that we put out there in the menu, so the $2.7 million big number, as well as the priorities that have come back, kind of have it. It's a very Anglican thing. It's an and proposition, right? So it is both that we are improving things for us here in the parish, and we're making them more available to the community. So in enhancing our physical grounds, the kitchen obviously has been used or is being used by more and more of the community, and improving that helps us because we're in there all the time and we use it for Soup Sunday and all sorts of things for the parish. But it also is going to make even more of those opportunities available for the community. So it's making it good for us and for the community. Same sort of thing with the access around the back. The more accessible that we make the building, the more people can get in, the more welcoming we are, because we all come in here all the time. We know exactly where to go. We know exactly how to get it. It actually is rather confusing. We actually heard some feedback from a newcomer that they kind of walk up. It's like, all right, there's these 3 doors. All of them are closed. Where do I go in? What is it? So, so I think all of these have that kind of helpful to us and helpful to the community.
So on the financial
Amy
side,
has a question. I'll just relay it. Go ahead. Yeah. Everybody's tired of the calisthenics.
just want to.
I'm sorry, Andy. There's a question coming in real quick. Just a minute, Andy. Go ahead, Amy. Mm-hmm. Sure. Yep. Yeah. So just so you hear the question is basically the sequence or ordering about how these things will be funded, because not everything will be funded fully. So the net is that when we do the asking phase, the invitation phase, there will be the opportunity. We will specify that, so it hasn't been determined, but we'll also give people the opportunity to give to specific projects. So in the end, there'll be a basket of 5 projects or 6 projects or so. And any of you that want to make a gift, you can designate that and say, I want this gift to go to this particular piece. Now, once that's fully funded, we'll also have to have what happens then? Do we accept overflows, or is that fund closed at that point? All sort of things we need to figure out, but there will be an opportunity to designate 2 particular things, as well as make a general gift. And then there'll be a policy in place, a list of here's the waterfall that we'll go through. Not determined yet though, but I think again, there will be sort of it will be specified, so you'll know if you make a general gift how it goes, but you'll also have the opportunity to kind of opt out of that policy and say, nope, I want it to go to this.
Yeah, I'm gonna say just a couple more words about that, if it's okay.
Yeah, please.
I skipped an important, Chris mentioned at the beginning, but we have a proposed goal for this campaign, a recommended goal for this campaign of between 750 and 800,000 in cash and pledges from the congregation over the next 5 years from the moment we do the campaign and on. That goal, I calculate that goal with 90% accuracy 90% of the time. So that's what this study is doing for us. That's why we want it. We are so excited about the response rate. So I'll be within 10%, 90% of the time of how, from the projection to how much you have. So when we take the amount of money we now know we can raise, and we have this list of prioritized projects and all the comments about what the congregation wants, we're moving from the menu that the tentative case statement was to, like I like to say, the window sticker on the car. If you ask for AC and blue paint, you're gonna get it for this amount. So when we get to the campaign stage, any gift you give is going to the campaign, and it's pretty well guaranteed to make those things happen. So it's more of a promise at that point. So you can also think about it that way, that we're doomed to succeed. So a gift to the campaign at that point is going to make absolute, you know, that it's going to get those things done. The order that it happens in may shift, but.
And that's the other part. So I think, Amy, you were primarily asking about the inflows, right? So one of the other main areas that we need to work on kind of in this next phase is getting really detailed about the outflows, right? So again, preservation and maintenance is clearly going to be in the list. And Brandon spent a bunch of time in some of the previous work kind of describing what that planned maintenance schedule looks like. So we have a prototype, but we need to be much more specific, right? Because, you know, let's say we target that for $500,000, you know, how does that grow over the 5 years? And then what's the income, you know, again, just, it's going to be a model. We're going to have to make some projections, but as the income starts to come off of that, how does it flow through the budget, and what's the actual schedule? So that if somebody's trying to make a decision about, do I give to preservation and maintenance, you know, planned maintenance, or do I give to the kitchen, they can know exactly what sort of they're investing in.
Yeah.
No, absolutely not. It's absolutely as the money comes in, but again, it's going to, I don't know what the projection will look like. We'll leave that to people that are smarter than me about the money side of it. But, you know, let's just say it's, you know, year one, it's $100,000. There can be some income off that, and we can do X. In year two, we'll have $200,000. There'll be some income off that, and we can do X plus Y. So that's the kind of modeling that we need to do. And again, that'll be a lot of the communication in this next 3 or 4 months. Back to your question. So no, we won't wait, but we also don't want to misset the expectation, because we know we're not going to have it fully funded in year one, about what's going to actually go on. So we're really trying to be transparent about what's going to happen as these things fund up. Okay, other questions? We are at time. So yeah, Diane, you want to come up or you want to relay? Mm-hmm. So the question is the ones that have a minus next to them that I'm not sure. You want to clarify your comment? What did you mean by that will work on them? Yeah, no, that's why I'm sorry, that comment was for Andy.
The minus on that prioritization question is how many people said they were opposed to that project. So a lot of times that means there might be a little extra work in determining how to decide to do it or not do it, communicating about it, taking care of the conditions that people weren't happy with, or answering the questions. So
yeah, I mean, ultimately, what I'm guessing is most likely is the one that we'll have to work on is the debt question. Okay. Mm-hmm. So just because in terms of the prioritization, that's the one that had the most people that were opposed, but it was also highly ranked. So we're going to have to work on that one. What would that work look like? Just to be brief, because I know we're a little bit out of time, and I'm happy to, again, continue to talk about it because I know it's an important topic. But this was one of the things we spent a lot of time talking about in the vestry. And what we realized is we don't actually know why people were opposed to it. So I think we're going to have actually, they indicated their preference, but we can actually we can make up 3 or 4 different explanations for why that might be true. So we're going to have some further conversation to really understand why, and see if there's a way that, again, we can prioritize it, we can move forward on it, that overcomes those objectives that they would be okay with. So it's really, what the work would be is saying, okay, you're opposed. Why? Can you explain why, and see how many different sorts of answers that we get on that. So I think it's the work's some conversation that we need to have with the people that indicated they were opposed. Is that clear enough? Okay. Gina, you have a question? All right, Gina's coming up.
Okay. This is just my impression of reading the comments from some people that they were not necessarily opposed to it, but they didn't think it was necessary. That was my impression from the comments.
Okay. Anything else? Is that clear enough, Diane? Clear enough? Okay. Okay, I'm sensing one last call. Everybody want to go to brunch? All right. Okay. Again, thank you all for attending. This is was a great dialogue. Again, the first of many conversations that we're going to have about this. Again, just to set expectations, Sherry and I have some work to do to get the committee formed. So the main ask for all of you is bring your questions, and think about them. All of this will be going up on the website, the handout, this video, under trinitycovington.org/report. So if somebody wasn't here and you think they're interested, please share that with them. But again, share that with your friends that weren't here. Ask your questions now or later, and volunteer for any of the committees if you're interested in serving. So, hold on, one more question for Mary Ann. She's you're very welcome. They're completely unrelated, but thank you. All right. Thanks, Andy.
Bye, y'all.